Welcome to We Are City of Five Nations podcast. This is our series, 30 Days of Community Building, and I'm Daniel Shaughnessy, and how cool it is today. My guests include lifetime locals and Brewmeisters, former mayor and state business leader Chuck Mills, and two-time high school state champion and current lawyer Larth Kienzle. Hello, guys.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, guys, take a turn and let us know, how in the world did you start? How did you get into brewing good beer?
You may want to say state champion tennis, because I wasn't a state champion in a lot of other things, but tennis I was okay at. Back in 1987, on a little trip to Dallas, I happened to be walking down Greenville Avenue, and there was a shop there. I stopped in, and they had all kinds of brewing information and brewing ingredients and kits. I never really thought that much about how beer was made until that time, and I spoke with the proprietor, and they sold me a brew kit and a recipe book, and I've been brewing ever since.
Well, what is that you've got behind you?
This is a beer that I've been brewing and been fermenting, and it's ready to be transferred. I use a system where I keg my product. I'm going to unveil this. This isn't to keep it warm. This is to keep light out, because light is bad for beer. So I'm going to open this up.
That looks like a big tub of fun there, Larth.
Yeah, this will be fun. And this is a beer style called a Cascadian, otherwise known as a black IPA. It is made like a regular IPA, but with darker malts. But this particular malt has a style that is less acidic, less acidified, and not as roasty as, say, like a stout. So this will not have that stout flavor, hopefully, when we taste it. But it should be very good. It will, and there's a secret ingredient in here, and I'm going to tell you what it is. It's coffee. I use coffee beans, which also help to darken it. So it will have a bit of a coffee flavor and a bit of a roasty flavor, but not much of a roasty flavor.
All right. All right, we're going to let you get started with that, Larth. We'll watch what you're doing. And Chuck, how did you, let's go back to Chuck. Chuck, how did you get into brewing good beer?
Well, you know, I first fell in love with craft beer in London, England, in a trip, 1986. And, you know, I thought, we can't get that here. So not at the time. And so fast forward to when I was mayor in 2008, early 2008, Bob Porshow asked me if I wanted to learn how to brew beer, because he'd been brewing for a few years. And I said, sure. And so we started with extract, which is a kit. You get everything in the kit. It's got a little bit of grain. It's got some liquid or dry malt extract. It's really a simple thing. Has the hops, has the yeast, has everything that you want. And you can pick those up online, or you can get it at a local brew store. Our local brew store that I like to go to is the Brew Shop of Oklahoma City, over there on Pennsylvania and about 36th or something, somewhere in that area, 29th. Anyway, so I started brewing with Bobby, and I tell you, after that first one we made, I was hooked. I go, this is it. Fresh. We're making 5-gallon batches, just like Larth has there. And so we brewed for about, together for about 7 years. Then we took a break, and he got busy because his kids were all getting married. So I started brewing by myself in early 17. And so about 3 years now, I've been brewing by myself. And I've moved up to what's called partial mash, which uses more grain and less of the processed grain, which is liquid or dry malt extract. And now I've moved to all grain, which is what Larth does. And this is the way the big boys do it, really. And it makes a big difference. Now, it adds a little bit more time for me. So I still kind of sometimes do a partial mash, but it's really pretty simple. I mean, I can make 10 gallons of beer in about 4 or 5 hours.
Wow.
And, that's a lot of beer. I mean, it's basically about each 5-gallon batch is about 50, 52, 12-ounce bottles. Of course, we all started bottling. I've only been kegging for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years. I can still bottle from the keg. But, you got to have bottles so you can share with your friends, because I have a home brewing license and I can't sell my beer. I have to give it away. So I have a lot of friends and, it's a fun hobby. It's, not very expensive once you kind of get set up into it. It's actually fairly inexpensive, and you can make any kind of beer that you want, just like Larth is doing. I mean, he's putting in coffee beans in a stout, in an IPA, which is crazy, but it sounds delicious.
Hey,
and you better share that with me.
There's one of your friends right behind you. I think I see Engineer Gary.
It's happy hour. I'm sharing my beer.
It's a club thing, isn't it? Bobby Porcho invited me once to a men's group that he would do. It was called Tuesday Group, and he got me involved in that. And one time I visited his office, and it was fun because I saw it was just weird things in the corner of the office. And when I asked him about it, he was kind of secretive. And then I finally got it out of him. And I think that's back when you guys were brewing some beer. And that's not,
oh, yeah.
I didn't get invited to that party though.
Oh, well, I don't know why. We had a lot of people.
Okay, Larth, what do you got going down there, man? We lost his audio. Try it again, Larth.
Yeah, I had to stand up and take care of this a little bit. As you can see, I had to stand up. A lot of this particular batch is using a technique called dry hopping. So there's a lot of little bits of hops still floating around in this, but most of them are sunk to the bottom. I'm trying not to suck up all of those bits of dry hops into this batch. So I'm trying to manipulate the hose so I don't get a bunch of that in here. If I get a little bit, it'll be okay. It'll come out in the first pour or two, so it'll be fine. But I don't want to get too much in it.
And so you're dropping it into a keg like bottle, right? So you can then add CO2 or something.
Maybe I can use the camera. If you can see down here, there's the keg it's going into. So you can follow the line. You can see that the level has dropped down considerably as I've been doing it.
Well, as we all start to drink beer, I think that we all have these kind of photographic moments in which we're like in our experience of beer. And I remember my first time trying beer about 40 years ago. And unfortunately, it coincided with the first time that I spent the night on the bathroom floor, which was not so good. But I realized it wasn't really the product; it was just my gluttony that put me there. Oh yeah, and so I have a lot of respect for creatives in particular, but people who can brew beer. I mean, what a talent that is! But that is a photographic moment that I have that I remember about beer. Do you guys have like a moment in time, and Chuck, we'll start with you, that you remember in your beer experience?
Well, I'm going to go back to that first time that I drank a homemade beer with Bob Porcho that we made in his house at the time. And I was hooked. That was it. I thought, this is the most delicious thing I've ever drank. It was smooth. It didn't have any aftertaste. I mean, it was refreshing. It was just such a good beer. I was hooked. That did it for me. And here I am now. I'm making many gallons of beer a year.
And let me tell you, your beer has that same effect. I've tasted some of the old Mills beer, and it has the same effect. It's great. What about you, Larth? What about a moment in time?
Well, I'd like to say that Chuck's beer was a transformative moment, but before that time, back in 1982, I had an opportunity to go to Germany. And so that was when I got my first real experience with beer that was consistently really good beer. The commercial product there is nothing like the commercial product was in the United States in 1982. Today, we've got a lot better commercial product from the smaller brewers and the craft brewers. But I followed up the next year. I went to Oxford to the summer. I was in law school at the time and went to a summer semester program there and had a chance to drink British-style ales, which are much different from the German lagers, but still they're great beers. And the experience of back-to-back summers going to Europe and tasting different beers that we couldn't get here was the thing that put me on the path to wanting to brew beer.
Well, I know, Larth, that when we visited Chuck, we got to visit together, and that was a privilege for me to watch you guys. It looked like two kids in a candy store. And Chuck, you're always complimenting Larth with his beer-making ability. I was born in St. Louis, Missouri, 100 years or so after the brand Budweiser was founded by the Anheuser-Busch family in St. Louis. So that, of course, became the largest beer name in the world. And so beer was commonplace with me my whole life. But a trivia question for you guys, okay? For you beer guys. Where did the name Budweiser stem?
Bukovic.
Vukovic? Is that how you say it? Where is Vukovic?
It's Bukovic. It's currently in the Czech Republic.
So was that the old time Bohemia?
Yes. Bukovic is the Czech pronunciation. The German pronunciation of the town is Budweis.
Budweis. That's it. Budweiser, right?
So Budweiser.
Very nice. Okay. Now, I gave you kind of a heads up, that would be the question. So I have a backup question trivia that I didn't give you a heads up with. What is the relationship between Budweiser and the City of Five Nations? There is a commonality that brings the two together. Any guess? Chuck, you're right. Chuck, it's in your backyard, man. It's in your backyard.
I've got a clue.
Tell me.
You said it's in Chuck's backyard. It's got to be the railway.
You're exactly right. Budweiser, what made them the national brand was they were the first to use refrigerated rail cars to be able to ship the beer, and they shipped it all over the country in refrigerated rail cars. And that ties them, of course, right here to the City of Five Nations.
Okay, as you can see, I've quit. This is played out. I don't want to get too far down and get into the stuff there. So my keg is full. I've got to leave some head space for the carbonation, so I'm ready to close it up. I've got a little bit of work to do, so you can go on with your broadcast while I work.
Okay, but I need you to tell me something, Larth. I need you. You're the history man. I want to know some sort of history fact about beer.
Okay. Well, we discussed this before the broadcast, but beer is one of the oldest beverages. It may be the third oldest beverage on the planet after water, milk, and then beer. We have evidence that beer making was going on 6,000 years ago in Mesopotamia. Archaeologists believe that people were making beer either accidentally or maybe on purpose as far back as 15,000 years ago. Beer is an important thing in the development of the history of the planet, because for millennia, water has been poisonous to drink. We think, well, water is water, but not everywhere is water safe to drink. Water has bacteria in it. It can kill you in places or make you very sick if you drink it. But people learned that if they drank beer, they didn't get sick. The reason is that beer kills bacteria. So beer is safe to drink. Water isn't always safe to drink. Beer led to the beginning of civilization. It led to the beginning of cultivation of grains. It led to mathematics in the study of geometry to be able to plot out the fields. And so without beer, we would not be a civilized planet.
I kind of agree, Chuck. The conversations that would have to take place to make our civilization more cultivated and to be able to figure all those things out mathematically, it probably was a good thing that we had some public houses going on back then.
Exactly.
What about you, Chuck? Do you have a historical fact that you can share?
I'm not a historian when it comes to beer. I mean, I've read a lot.
Uh-huh.
As you start making different styles, always do a little bit of research, and of course that always includes the origination of that beer and with the style. And that's the thing, is there's so many different styles. I mean, Gary knows, as he started, he had no idea there were so many different kinds of beers. He's drinking one of my very first type styles of beer I've made. It's a Belgian Double. And, I've made Belgian Pilsners, I've made triples. I've not made a quad because those are really strong, but I've never made a Belgian Double. And so this is my first one, and it actually came out really well. But there's just so many different ales and lagers, and, and that's the thing that people don't understand a lot of times, is the differences. An ale is a top fermenter that's brewed at room temperatures. A lager is actually fermented at freezing or 32 degrees, 30 degrees over about a 6 or 8 week period of time. And it really drops everything that's in the liquid. It makes it really clear, really light. So, those people out there that want a lighter tasting beer typically go to lagers. But, that at that same time, I know a lot of people that are intimidated by these beer board menus at these microbreweries. And I always tell people, look, there's a few simple things you want to look at. One is the IBUs. That's the International Bittering Unit. And that Lars makes some really good high IBU IPAs that aren't that bitter. Because typically a lot of IPAs are just bitter because they pile a lot of hops in there, and it makes it really bitter. But that's not necessarily 100% true. But if I were going to just a microbrew that I didn't know anybody that made it, I would look at it, and I'm going to top out at about 50 or 60 IBUs to be conservative. Lars has given me some that's like 90 IBUs, and it's great. So, they want to look at that, and then look at the ABV, the alcohol per volume. That's your alcohol percentage. So, and then look and see if it's an ale or a lager. I mean, that's it. There's just very few things, but I'll tell you what, number one would be the and
Yeah, so we lost Chuck just for a second, but Larth. So what I heard him to say though was the ABU, the bitter, IBU. That should be somewhere between 50 and 60 is probably a pretty safe one for most novice drinkers.
No.
Okay.
No. Novice drinkers are going to want something very low on the IBU scale. A Budweiser, a Bud Light, a Coors Light that people are familiar with drinking is going to be very low, typically like maybe 12 to 20 on the IBU scale. It's not going to have much hop flavor to it.
Okay.
That's craft brewers and home brewers. That's their big complaint about commercial brewing is they use cheap ingredients. They use not enough hops and not the right kinds of hops.
Gotcha.
When you're crafting your own beers, you're free to use better ingredients, more higher quality ingredients. The beers that people buy commercially, not from the craft brewers that are in place, starting with in Oklahoma City, starting with Coop. Now we have dozens of them, Anthem and Stone Cloud and Rough Tail, Vanessa House. I could go on. There's now dozens of breweries in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
But the old beer that we could buy here, the Budweisers and the Coors, are made. They're not made in the traditional way that European beers are made. They're made with adjuncts like corn syrup and rice.
Gotcha.
Which is much cheaper than barley, and they use small amounts of hops, and hops are really the most expensive thing in your beer.
So that's why when I go to these breweries, there's a weight to the beer that I'm drinking. I mean, you
Yes.
feel it. It's like you're eating.
Yes. And there are, I've mentioned Vanessa House. Vanessa House has some styles that are very quaffable. Their 401k is a light ale that's a good entry beer for people who haven't been to craft breweries before, but they can typically drink that and they can tell that it's a high quality beer without it being overpowering in flavor until they get used to that.
Well, I think I'm going to be applying for a beer license for that West Main Street building, and I want you guys to be my small quantity master brewers. That would be fun. How about that?
Let's do it.
That sounds fun.
I've got some beer names. I need your opinions, okay? First of all, how about Mayor's Brew? How about that?
I like that. Or Mayor's Choice.
Like Mayor's Milk.
Oh, yeah. Mayor's Milk. That's nice.
Oh, I could make a milk stout. A sweet milk
You
stout.
could.
I think that's cool. How about Lawyer's Lager?
I like it.
You like
Oh
that?
boy. I'm not sure I like that one.
Hey, how about Ironside IPA? For
Ironside?
Railroad.
Yeah, I like that. That's good.
I like that one. Larth
It
in
is.
charge of that one.
Well, my IPA series is Wolf Tears.
Oh,
Wolf.
I like that too.
Uh-huh.
That's right.
Well,
I think
here's
you guys
another
would
one
have
for
some of that.
Here's another one for you, Chuck. I think you might like this. How about if we call one Deep Drill?
Okay.
You like that?
I like that.
What do you think, Larth?
Deep Drill.
Deep Drill. I'm not
And
sure
what
what kind of
style is
beer
it?
that would be. I mean, is that a double? Is that maybe that's a quad or something?
Chuck
Drill,
can,
that
Chuck
sounds-
can use that one to make his first quad.
That sounds like a double IPA. DIPA.
Okay.
Deep
DD.
Drill DIPA. What do you
Love
think?
it. Okay, now this might be my favorite, and it's kind of funny. I might be playing to the crowd, but why don't we call one Kienzle? I mean, that's a good German name, right? Kienzle.
That's going to be my lager. My Pilsner is going to be a Kienzle. Kind of like Lowenbräu. So
I love it. There's a number of ways that we could get Mill in there or Mills in there, hundreds of ways, I'm sure. Hey,
I like Kinzelweizen.
Kienzle
that's a good
Weizen?
one.
German wheat beer. Kinzelweizen.
Yeah,
I like that too. Yeah.
that's
Hey.
good.
So,
This is crazy.
Chuck, we'll start with you. Tell us, how do you judge a good beer in the sense of what makes a beer good?
Okay, this is my idea of a good beer. When you take a drink and you get all the flavor in your mouth and you go, oh man, that tastes so good. And you drink it and there's no aftertaste, which makes you want another drink. That's the perfect beer.
I like that a lot. You know, there's a lot of times in which that just doesn't happen. And I mean, I won't go into a place anymore and actually, if they just have cans, I won't be drinking beer because I just can't get away from that aftertaste. You hit that well. What do you think, Larth? What's the judge of a good beer?
What a good beer is, that's a subjective thing. There are people who love Coors Light. I wouldn't drink a Coors Light today unless it was the only thing available. But good beer is a subjective thing. It's what people like. I like beers with a little more body and quite a bit more hops to them. Not everybody likes that, and I understand that. So sometimes I brew beer that doesn't have that high gravity, high hop quality because I've made a beer for people that is more of a light Belgian style with orange in it. But it's what people want, and that's what makes a good beer. It's brewing something that people want to drink. Chuck wants a beer without much aftertaste, and that's fine. I may want a beer with a little bit of a lingering flavor at the end, and that may be a little different beer, but as long as the aftertaste is good, then I'm okay with it.
I am too.
Yeah, and Chuck, that's why I really like your happy hours and that idea is because you get to meet so many different people and the number of beers that are different. It's just such a neat thing to hear everybody's feedback on the beers because you're right, Larth. It seems like nobody has the same favorite. They're all just a little bit different with the opinion. It's very subjective.
So here's my menu board right now. I don't know that you can see this, but I've got a blonde, I've got a Belgian double, I've got a strawberry blonde, I have an Irish stout, a Mexican lager, a Hefeweizen, a Munich Dunkel, American amber ale, and a cream ale, and I've got a sweet stout and a whiskey barrel stout and a Blue Moon clone in the fermenter right now. I have variety.
That you do. And Larth, what about you, man? What are you? We've got your keg right behind us, right?
Yeah, this is. I described this, but I'll tell you, it's brewed with a German malt called Black Prinz, Prinz.
Yeah, I have some of that. Perfect.
It's a good malt to bring in some dark color without giving it too much of a roasty flavor. Because this has coffee beans and Black Prinz, I've thought of calling this either Prince of Darkness or maybe Java Prince. So I'm open to the name, but I think we'll just call it Java Prince for today.
I like that.
I like that too. That's actually pretty cool. And we at the City of Five Nations believe community filled with individuals, foreign to one another, coming together to create deeper, truer understandings of each other is going to drive this entire world to a more powerful and positive human experience. And with that, this is the We Are City of Five Nations podcast and our series 30 Days of Community Building. And so during these podcasts, we love for you to be able to ask questions, and these guys love to answer questions if you'd like to throw some out there now. But always know as we bring you these that we love to have you integrated, and we love to be able to bring people together because really we know a lot of people around, but there are so many people within our 5-mile radius that we just don't know. We're a little foreign to one another. And so the idea behind this community building is maybe bring some people together that normally wouldn't be together and get to know one another in this unique digital platform to take advantage of the opportunity that we have. And so thank you very much for watching. And of course, thank you to our guests. And before we go, though, a final question. It's Friday night, guys, and it's a great night for beer drinking, of course. And you're going to say what night is not a great night, right, for beer drinking? But what is the name of your favorite beer?
There's no favorite. Go, Chuck.
I was going to say the same thing. It's like saying, who's your favorite child? I love them all. It depends on what time of year. Now, in the wintertime, I like stouts and I like holiday ales. In the summertime, I like light lagers and easy drinking beer. So, I have different favorites at different times of year. So right now I'm brewing a lot of summertime stuff, but I'm still throwing some stouts in there because they actually mellow after a period of time. So by the fall and the winter, these are going to be premium beers.
Oh man, and thank you for the brewing you do, Chuck. Go ahead, Larth. What do you say?
Well, I'm going to put a beer in here I haven't had before, and hopefully it's the one that I'm going to like the best.
So yours happens to be, your favorite is the beer you're drinking.
It's the one in my hand. But this is a beer from Tufts Brewery in McKinney, Texas. I just picked up.
That's a good one.
DDH IPA. Yep. It's a blood orange double dry hopped India Pale Ale. It's an experimental beer. It's got some very interesting looking hops: Sabro, Ariana, and Calista hops. So it smells wonderful.
Well, dovetailing on that, then, do you guys have a recommendation on how to find good new craft beers? in the sense of, is it the liquor stores or now the grocery stores, or when you're traveling? What's a recommendation? Just get lucky?
Go to the breweries. Go to the brewery tap rooms and ask for recommendations from the people behind the bar, because they know. If you know what kind of beer you like, they can direct you to that. Or if you don't know what kind, they'll give you flights. Sometimes a flight will be a small taster with 5, maybe 6 beers in it that you can try different things and see what you like. That's an excellent way to experiment, find out what kind of beer that you like, and go to Oklahoma City in Brewers Row. There's like I say, there's maybe a dozen breweries right downtown. Do it in moderation, but experiment. Do it over several days so you don't have to drink too much. But you'll find a lot of different varieties, a lot of things that you'd like to try. Some you may not like, but others you will. And that's the best way to figure out what kinds you like. And it's the best way to pinpoint maybe a couple of beers that the brewers make that might become your favorite.
Chuck, what about you? Any advice?
That is the way to do it. But if you can't do that, and because you know what? People aren't traveling very far right now.
That's true.
So if you can get yourself to a liquor store, read those labels. Yeah. I'm telling you, I would look at, if I were a novice drinker, and again, Larth's right. Everybody likes something different. If you like a hoppy beer, look for those IBUs. Look for that ABV, which is the alcohol, because, you can go get a quad and drink 13% beer and get hammered. But you can also taste that alcohol a lot of times if you're not used to it. So look for that. The IBU is the bitterness, international bittering units, and look for the ABV, which is the alcohol content. Those are the keys. And then, decide, do you want an ale or do you want a lager? And that's all you got to look at if you don't have time to go to the city. Those guys are all shut down right now. They're only serving in growlers, which you can take with you. But they also have their beer in cans in Domino's, in the liquor stores, anywhere. But that's the key, is to understanding what you're buying. Otherwise, you're going to be very disappointed in the money that you're spending.
Well, we don't want to disappoint anybody. And thanks to my brother for the shout out, Larth. My brother watched you tonight. You had some days playing tennis with him, didn't you?
Absolutely. I hope he's still hitting them well.
Oh, he does. He's one of the best at what he does, still in the sport. And tomorrow night at 5:30, we'll be back on with another City of Five Nations podcast. We'll have Damian Phillips, an interesting young man who owns a business down in Dallas. He's from the Dunbar area right here in our community, and also a music producer. He's always fun to talk to, and he's got good stories to tell, and that's happening tomorrow at 5:30. I want to thank you both, Larth and Chuck. It's always fun to get together with you guys and talk beer. Always fun.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Hey,
this is good, by the way. Very orangey.
Everybody remember, here in the City of Five Nations, together we are building community one season at a time. Good night, everybody.
See ya.